This is episode 16 of the Visual Basic series, and in this episode we're going to be looking at exceptions. So an exception, or rather exceptions in programming, are errors that occur during runtime. And an example of such an error would be, maybe let's say you are trying to divide a number with a string, or maybe you are trying to access an array element that is out of bounds, or that doesn't have an index. Or maybe you're trying to establish a database connection, but there's no network, or there's no internet, is it? So an exception is any error that you're going to encounter during runtime. And basically, what we can do as programmers is to actually avoid exceptions, or rather handle them appropriately. And as such, Visual Basic actually has some built-in functionality to handle exceptions. And the way we handle exceptions in Visual Basic is to make use of the try catch block, as it were. So let's actually go ahead and demonstrate this concept of the try and catch. Let's start by defining a variable called number. Then let's make this one 78. Then let's also declare another variable, but this time around maybe let's declare it as message. Maybe instead of giving it a number, this time around let's give it a value of test, which is a string. So in essence, this what we have is we have a number in the string, is it? So let's actually go ahead and try and divide these two numbers, or rather these two variables, as it were. So let's say console.writeLine. Then we want to divide number by message. So remember, we said that an exception is an error that's going to happen at runtime. So you notice that right here that the Visual Basic compiler is actually not giving me, or rather the IDE is not picking up anything wrong with my code, is it? Because for the main reason is because I didn't specify the data type right here. I just passed a number, then I passed a string right here. So what's going to happen is that it's actually going to try and run this code without first checking to see the data type for each. But then it's actually going to run into an exception or an error because you cannot divide a string and a number. So let's actually run this code and see what we get. So the console window pops up, right? And you'd expect that it's going to run, but you realize that immediately the console window is going to collapse, is it? And now the IDE picks up that we have an unhandled exception. Maybe let me just run the code one more time, because I think I closed the console window. So you see that I have an unhandled exception right here, is it? So it's saying that test to type double is not valid. So in other words, it's telling me that I cannot convert this string text test to a double at runtime. Of course, I could try and use typecasting, but that's tedious. But so the way we can do it is to make use of exception handling. So maybe let's say that we definitely know that this could actually provide an error. So let me demonstrate the concept of a try catch block. So what I can do is right here I can come and say try, right? Then I'm going to say to try and divide the number by message, and in the event that I fail to divide that, I want to catch that exception. I want to handle that exception. So the way you do it is to create an exception object called ex. Then you declare it as of type exception. So exception is a class built into the Visual Basic library that basically represents errors that occur during application execution. You can see right there from the tooltip that's popping up when I hover over the exception class. So in the event that I get that I fail to perform the try section, I simply want to console.writeLine. Then what I want to do is to get exception message, just like that. Then I end my try block. So let's go ahead and run this and see what we get this time around. So the console window pops up, and you can see that it's, instead of crashing or giving me that error, it's no longer crashing, is it? it's actually giving me this conversion from string text to type double is not valid. So this time around I get a nice message, or rather an informative message, that tells me why my program is not working. So that's the beauty of exception handling. You surround the code that you think might, you suspect might give you an error, which is basically a runtime error, or rather an exception. Then you put it inside of a try. Then in the event that it gives you the expected error, you catch that exception, or you handle that exception such that your program doesn't crash abruptly, but it just outputs some useful information, as it were. Then we can also extend the functionality of a try catch block by making use of a finally clause. So the finally clause, what it does is that in the event that we run into an exception, we might want to clean up some actions, like maybe, for instance, let's say that we are writing a database application, is it? Then when we are trying to write some information to the database, right? So what we can do is we can come up here, then let's just pretend we want to write something to the database. So you can go console and do write line, and it's going to write this message which says that is established database connection, is it? So we would have opened the database connection, or rather we would have established the database connection because we want to write a particular, we want to perform a particular action which requires us to store values to a database, is it? So we established the database connection, right? But now let's suppose that this statement right here is actually going to give us an error. Maybe let's say that the user did provide information that we are unable to store to the database. So what would ordinarily happen is that we would this catch block would run, is it, and it would basically give us a message that maybe the values that you are trying to provide are incorrect or are incompatible with values that we expect. So ordinarily it would end there, is it? But now that would leave our database connection open if we don't have this finally clause right here. So essentially, database connection is going to be remain open, and we might have resource leakage or some sort of like security breach, right? So what you want to do is to clean up after an exception. So the way you clean up after an exception is occurred is to make use of a finally clause. So let me just get rid of this one more time, and then I'll run the code and I'll show you what I'm talking about in the console right there. Of course, we don't have an actual database connection that we're trying to establish, but it's just for demonstration purposes. So we've established a database connection, but now having established the database connection, right, we ran into this exception, right, or this error, as it were. Then the program just halts. So in the event that we'd actually established an actual database connection, you'd realize that the database connection will still be on, is it? And that might actually be tying up some resources, or we could have some resource leakage, or we could have a security breach because we've opened the database connection. So we need to close that database connection even if we have an exception. So the way we do it is to have that finally clause right there. So finally, we simply want to close the database connection. So it means that your code to close the database connection would come here. So code to close database connection goes here, is it? Such that when we run this program this time around, we have a finally clause. And what's going to happen is that we are going to establish a database connection, but we are going to fail to perform the operation that we wanted to perform. But nonetheless, we are still going to close the database connection, right? So that's how you can clean up after an exception has occurred, by making use of the finally clause inside of the or rather inside of the try block, as it were. So yeah, that's the essence of exception handling in Visual Basic. I'll see you in the next tutorial.